Right now, my signature program, Scribe School, is open for enrollment, but not for long. This is the robust program that will take you from knowing nothing or a little bit about hieroglyphs to reading the common text you're going to actually see in museums, online, and on trips to Egypt. And there's a very special bonus available right now for the first 25 people who sign up by Friday, May 15th. They'll get the special bonus Hieroglyph a Day planner. This planner is not available anywhere else. It's not sold separately. This is the only way to get it. So you'll want to check out all the details and grab your spot in Scribe School at scribeschool.com. Welcome to Voices of Ancient Egypt, the podcast for people who don't just want to learn about ancient Egypt, but want to understand it on a deeper, more meaningful level. I'm Melinda Nelsonhurst, an Egyptologist with a PhD in the field and years of experience teaching at the university level, working in Egypt, and training students around the world to read real ancient Egyptian texts. I've spent decades studying this civilization in a traditional academic setting so you don't have to, and so you can access knowledge that's usually locked behind academic walls. This podcast brings ancient Egyptian history, beliefs, and language to life, and shows you that learning hieroglyphs is possible, no matter your age, background, or schedule. So whether you want to read hieroglyphs in museums, on social media, or on your next trip to Egypt, you'll find the tools, stories, and encouragement to make it real right here. Let's hear the voices of the ancient world together. Hello, and welcome to the podcast today. I'm really excited to be recording this episode for you because it relates to a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is that you can learn hieroglyphs, right? I'm calling this episode, Are You Ready to Be a Scribe? Because I hear from a lot of you that you're just not sure you're ready. Maybe you really want to learn hieroglyphs. It's something you've been thinking about for years potentially, and you're just not sure, are you really ready? Is this the time? How should you go about doing it? And all of that. So today I want to talk a bit about my program, Master Scribes, why I created it, and who it's for. And this is, again, to answer that question I get a lot, which is, am I really ready for something like this? So first, I want to get into why did I create this program in the first place? So before I created Master Scribes, I already had my program Scribe School, which is my foundational introductory program. It's self-paced. So if you're interested in an introductory course that's self-paced, you can check out all the details about Scribe School by taking my free class, 4 steps to go from student to scribe, and you can find that at student2, that's the numeral 2, scribe.com. So I had a ton of students, hundreds of people have taken it, and I had a ton of students who kept asking me, what is the next step? And this is what inspired me to create Master Scribes as a sort of continuation program. However, I've taken it much further than that. It's not just a continuation program for those who've been in Scribe School. I also have a lot of beginners who go ahead and jump in from the beginning in Master Scribes, because it does also include everything that's in Scribe School, all the beginner curriculum and such. So it's not restricted to just like one specific level there, but the original inspiration was as that continuation. And part of what I found people really needed, particularly at that stage, but also at other stages too, is to have a sort of deeper dive into Egyptian and also more robust support. So I created this program to be a more intensive mentorship kind of program with not just unique curriculum, but also an incredibly supportive, smaller community with lots of touch points from me. So you can think of it as sort of a fast track, although honestly, the track is as fast as you want it to be. So it's also created to fit into a real life, your life, whatever that might look like. And this is done through a number of ways, which I will also get into. So you can hear a little bit about like what's really in Master Scribes, what do we do, how does it all come together? I've talked about why I created it, but what really goes into it. Master Scribes is a combination of my innovative curriculum, which I created specifically because I found that the curriculums that were out there really didn't work very well for most people, didn't work very well for me when I was in graduate school, or my fellow students who didn't want to admit it at the time, but have since told me later, now that we're out of those classes. And I've even had other Egyptologists who have PhDs actually come up to me and tell me they want to take my programs because they felt like they learned so little in their programs because of the way the language was taught. And I had that experience, and it took me years of teaching and learning about learning research to develop a new curriculum that really meets people where they are and can fit also into a real life. This is not a curriculum that you need to, completely clear the decks, like as if you're going back to graduate school to be able to do. It's created to be both effective, regardless of your situation, and something that's really flexible to fit into real life. So our curriculum is based around what I'll call a text-led approach. And what this means is that we're focused on actually reading real Egyptian texts. So just a little quick word about traditional methods. The traditional method is to work through a really thick grammar book and try to basically cram all of the information about the entire structure of the language into your head first before you actually get into reading the real texts, right? So you can probably understand, even if you haven't experienced it, I know some of you have experienced this, but even if you haven't, you can understand probably why that's so challenging and why the vast majority of people really struggle with actually making progress and learning how to read things that way. So I've flipped that completely on its head, and we do everything based on the texts that we're wanting to read first. It doesn't mean that we totally ignore grammar. It is in there as needed with as little jargon as possible, by the way. But it is included very purposefully when there's a reason, like that you really need to know it for reading particular things, not just for the sake of here's these 10 million details that we think you should know. So in this text-led approach, we're learning to read a wide variety of texts. So at the introductory level, it's everything from the basics of how hieroglyphs work to reading common texts like pharaohs' names and titles, to things called the offering prayer, which you'll see on tons of monuments in museums and on trips to Egypt, as well as things like tomb and temple walls, which of course you'll also see when you go to Egypt a lot, or when you go to Egypt on any kind of trip, whether a long or short one, you will certainly encounter these. From there, we move on to a little bit more advanced texts, and we sort of just gradually step forward into more and more advanced. So one of the first things people do when they get into this next level and into Master Scribes is to learn how to read heart scarabs, which have spells from the Book of the Dead on them. There were an amulet that people wanted to help them pass the judgment into the afterlife. It's essentially to keep your heart from testifying against you at this judgment. So I'm not going to go into every single text because it's a lot, but just to give you a few highlights of the kinds of things that we're reading that guide our progression through the curriculum. So we have heart scarabs, and in the process of that, of course, we also learn the grammar that we learned for that and the vocabulary that we learned for that also helps us read a variety of other texts. So, for example, tomb wall inscriptions that have a wider variety of things on them than we learned earlier in the curriculum. And then we get into other variety of things such as historical documents, like some of Amenhotep III's commemorative scarabs that he put out, which have different events commemorated on them, and also into parts of letters and literature. We also get into parts of medical texts. And as we progress, we get into sort of longer and longer sections of some of the longer texts like literature, such as, for example, the story of the shipwrecked sailor. And one thing that is coming up very soon in the curriculum. So I should point out at this point that the curriculum is always growing. There's tons already in there, all these things I've already mentioned, and that's just scratching the surface. There's a lot more than what I just mentioned. So there's tons of stuff already in the curriculum waiting for you, but I'm also always adding to the curriculum. So there's always new things to work on and new things to challenge yourself with. So one of the things that I am adding very soon in this upcoming cohort of Master Scribes is our next module will be revolving around reading the so-called negative confession from the Book of the Dead. So this particular text I know is kind of a bucket list item for a lot of people. This is part of what's called Spell 125 from the Book of the Dead. So you might be familiar at least with pictures of this spell. So maybe you've seen that scene of the weighing of the heart, where you have the heart on one side of the scale and the feather of Ma'at on the other. This is a scene that comes from Spell 125. The negative confession specifically is all about essentially denying a bunch of things that you were not supposed to have done during life to further emphasize that you are suitable for making it into the afterlife, passing this judgment, and so forth. So I'm excited to be adding that very soon, and I do add new things like this to the curriculum every single month. Now, in addition to the curriculum, which gets lots of affection from people, we also have really intensive support. So we have a private community hosted on a platform called Slack. So it's off of social media. For those who are not on social media, you don't have to worry about being on social media for this. And it's a nice little contained space that's well organized just for us and just for your interests, your questions, sharing what you're working on and all of that. And it's available to you 24/7 for any of those things, sharing, asking questions, and so forth. And I'm in there daily answering questions and interacting with everybody. I like to think of it as like having an Egyptologist in your back pocket. But that's not the only support there is. That is a wonderful way to access support, not just from me, but also from your fellow scribes and master scribes. But in addition to that, we also have twice monthly group coaching calls where you can submit questions, and that could be about the curriculum and master scribes. Also, I get questions oftentimes about other areas of Egyptology, and we can really geek out deeply in those, and they're recorded. So even if you can't make that particular time of day, or you happen to be traveling that week, for example, you can always catch the replay to hear answers to either your questions and also to others. And actually, this is a wonderful thing that if you haven't seen or listened to the episode that came out recently with my student Jen, this is one where she talks about actually how much she enjoys this aspect of it, because she feels like she actually gets twice the support, twice the coaching that you would get with just one-on-one tutoring with an expert. And you can check out that episode as episode 8. So these calls are wonderful, like I said, for a variety of topics. Sometimes I also just get asked about my experience as an Egyptologist or what graduate school was like, things like that. And we have a wonderful time on those. Or you might have seen my email a while back of when I was talking about questions about, unusual things like mustaches on statues in ancient Egypt. That actually was a question that went to our community on Slack. But I also get questions oftentimes similar to that for the calls. So these are both spaces where we love to talk about ancient Egypt, get all your questions answered, and generally kind of geek out about ancient Egypt together. There's really nothing else like this program out there, both in terms of the curriculum and in terms of the support. I mean, you can think about like, what are the other options out there? There are, of course, some university courses if you happen to live close enough to a university with Egyptology. There are occasionally some other online programs available, but I don't know of any other programs out there or courses available that approach the curriculum in the way that I do, that's informed by not just my experience as a teacher and a learner, but by the learning science behind this, and the way that things are structured are actually done that way very purposefully for what makes sense for how people learn. And in addition to that, of course, focusing on what's actually our goal, which is to read real text rather than necessarily just to explore things on a theoretical level. And I also don't know of any other programs where you get this level of support from the professor or from the Egyptologist that you might be working with. It's very different from a university course, but in a way that I feel like I think you get actually that many more touch points and support, and it's even easier to get your questions answered at any time that you have them. You don't have to go to a particular location at a particular time and, just have a few minutes to maybe ask some questions and so forth. This is really made to fit with your life and be able to support you in whatever way you need at the phase that you're at. And speaking of the phase that you're at, I also get a lot of questions from people about, am I really a good fit for Master Scribes? I'm worried I'm not advanced enough, because I do refer to this program as sort of my next level program. And so I can really understand why this might make you feel like you're not ready for a Master Scribes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about who is a good fit for Master Scribes. So first of all, Master Scribes actually can work for you at any level, whether you're a beginner or you already have some background in Egyptian already. So I mentioned before Scribe School, my introductory program. The curriculum from Scribe School is also included in Master Scribes. So if you want to start totally at the beginning, you absolutely can. And actually, I've had many students do this before. So like my student, Nikki, who was recently on the podcast also, you can go check out his episode in episode 9. If you'd like, Nikki started out as a beginner in Master Scribes and found the support there really invaluable in going from basically the beginning. Like he'd read a few chapters in a book before, but hadn't taken any formal courses or anything like that. And so he went basically from the beginning up through all the introductory material and into the Master Scribes main curriculum and into some more advanced things like the Book of the Dead. And he did this all while working in a language that's not his native language. He's not a native English speaker and with a learning disability. So you absolutely can do this. And if you're interested in his story, check out episode 9. So you absolutely can do this as a beginner. And what really sets Master Scribes apart is that this is designed for those of you who are really ambitious, motivated, and excited learners who are ready to really dive in and make progress, no matter where you are right now, to make that progress and go deep and learn essentially everything that you want to, right? You can go as far as you want to with this. And so I look at it as more of like your attitude and your ambition with it matters more than anything, really, more than your background. If you're ready to learn, we're absolutely ready to meet you right where you are. This is really just a room of people who want to geek out on another level, even if you're just getting started or if you have a background. We also have had people in the program who do have more backgrounds or who've worked with me before. It's a really wide variety, and we have people at all different levels. So if you want to be in a room where you have people at different levels, including people who are potentially ahead of you, this is a perfect place for you. As Jen mentioned in episode 8, this is one of the things she loves about the program. She's worked far ahead. Actually, she's high level, but she feels like there's still also people in the program who are ahead of her. And she loves that because she learns from them also, not just from me. And so that really kind of enriches the program. And she can also interact with those who are her level or maybe a little behind her and those things. And that just overall really enriches the experience. So you might be wondering now, when I say that this is for ambitious, serious learners, right? You might be thinking this sounds really serious, and I am a serious learner and super excited, but I'm really busy, so I'm not sure if this could work for me. And I totally get this because, modern life is busy. I feel this myself with things that I find important that I want to fit into my life. And sometimes that can feel difficult, right? So I completely understand where you're coming from with this feeling because it's absolutely true. We all have a lot of things going on. What I find though, when this question comes up is a lot of times, and this happens to me, I've seen this in myself, which is how I've learned about it, is that sometimes this is more about sort of learning perfectionism or like an all or nothing kind of view where you might be feeling like you can't do this until you have this sort of perfect situation, perfect timing, where everything is aligned and you have a large amount of space in your schedule, for example. And I can, again, totally relate to this. This is how I've felt about lots of things in my life. But I have found, both with my students and myself, that this is honestly something that just holds us back. And if you look back, you might realize that generally these perfect times don't really ever come, right? What changes is not the timing being perfect. What changes is we decide to commit to doing these things, right? But the reason that this can work is because it's not just about the commitment. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, right? It is very much about the commitment, but it's also about the fact that this actually doesn't need to take over your life. You don't need to clear the decks and have huge amounts of time, right? And oftentimes people find actually that when they work in my programs with less time, they learn more than when they were spending more time on it, either self-studying or in another program or course. So if you want to hear about that, actually, my students, Mariana and Rick, as well as others, but those are the two that are coming to mind right now, absolutely talk about this on the podcast in their interviews. So you can check out Mariana's interview as episode 4 and Rick's interview as episode 6. So Mariana actually was in a master's program for Egyptology before, but felt like she really didn't get much out of the language aspect of that. And she came to me looking for an alternative. She used to cram for 8 hours a day when she was taking those language classes. That's 8 hours a day, right? And still felt like she was not really getting anywhere. When she came to me, she started studying in much smaller amounts a day, sometimes just 30 minutes at a time, sometimes even 20 minutes at a time. And she found that she made so much more progress with the curriculum and support in my programs than she did when she was doing those 8-hour blocks. So you really don't need massive amounts. I know even when it's 30 minutes, you still might be thinking like, okay, but where am I going to put those 30 minutes in? I've had a variety of solutions that my students have come up with for that. So some like to do it during a lunch break at work, for example. Others might like to do it after work in the evening. They have dinner and then dedicate 20 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever it is that they have, to studying after dinner time. Or like Rick in episode 6, you can listen to his. He committed to studying 30 minutes at a time, 3 days a week. And he decided that the way that he was going to make this happen was simply to set his alarm a half an hour earlier so he could study before he went to work. Because he said he finds, and I know lots of us have this experience, I certainly do, that once things get started with work and other commitments and family life and so forth, that things can just unexpectedly blossom and take up all your time, right? And things can go wild. So he decided he needed to fit this in before work, and that's how he did it. He simply just set his alarm earlier. And because he did that, he actually found that he even went beyond his commitment of 3 days a week and was doing it at least, generally most weeks, at least 5 days a week. Of course, he takes breaks sometimes. So does Mariana and Jen, who I mentioned, and everybody else as well. But the idea is that when you do it this way in these small chunks, it also helps you be consistent with it because you're not like waiting for that time when you have 2 hours or something like that before you can sit down and do this. And actually, one of the very first things we do when you come into Master Scribes is a 6-day challenge, which only takes you 10 minutes a day and gets you set up with a study schedule that fits your specific situation and your life so that you can have this type of schedule like Rick created or like Mariana has created for herself as well, where you're working in these smaller chunks but more frequently. And the learning science absolutely backs this up. I talk about this more in the program, but just to give you a quick insight into that is that they found through studies that more frequency actually helps you learn and retain more than studying less frequently, but with more time. So Mariana found this, of course, with doing the 8 hours at a time thing, and smaller amounts of time as, with some frequency worked way better for her. And this is something that's actually backed up by science. So it really can fit into any kind of schedule. And at a certain point, you just have to ask yourself if you really actually want to do this. Do you want to learn hieroglyphs? Do you keep saying you want to learn, but then there always seem to be reasons not to? Well, the truth is, life is always going to be busy, right? So you just need to choose to make this a part of your life, and it can fit in. And I will help you absolutely with finding how this will fit in to your life and your schedule. It's one of the things I find so important. And it's one of the things that really sets this program apart too. Although I didn't mention it earlier when I was talking about what's in the program, I also have multiple workshops on how to make the most of your time by using learning science to really up the caliber of your study sessions, as well as on how to make these study sessions fit into your life and work with a real schedule with real people who have lots of other commitments in life. So if you have some background in Egyptian already, though, you might also be wondering, is this the right fit for you? Just like if you might be at the beginning, you're wondering, am I advanced enough? Some who have some background, like maybe you've taken some university courses before, you might be wondering, is this the right level for me to jump into? The great thing about Master Scribes is you can jump into whatever level fits you at the time. So whether you're a beginner or you're maybe more intermediate, you can jump into that part of the curriculum. Oftentimes I find, though, that even the curriculum that might be a little earlier on is actually going to teach you a lot of things that you don't already know, even if you have taken a course before, because, again, this is a text-lit approach that's so much of a different approach that you'll learn how to read these kinds of texts we talked about, like letters and the Book of the Dead and literature, stories, tomb walls, scarabs, etc., that you just won't find most other places. So even if you've done something before, or maybe you're feeling a little rusty, you can jump in whatever place works best for you and be off to the races with the innovative curriculum and support that's available to you in Master Scribes. So applications are now open for Master Scribes, but we close on March 11th, and our special Fast Action bonus, which is a special live class about the Book of the Dead, is only available if you apply by March 4th. So you'll want to head over to masterscribes.com and submit your application right away. I will personally review it and get back to you about how Master Scribes might fit for you and your particular situation. And I can't wait to talk about it with you there.